Mr. Speaker, he's broken his promise to grow the economy. The only thing that's grown is the welfare bill. The only thing that's grown is the welfare bill. Why we're spending more on welfare than we're earning in tax? It's because of him and his terrible policies. This is all under him. We are spending so much on welfare, we cannot afford to defend the country. I think the whole country is sick of this man's tone-deaf, pompous moralizing. This government is like a bad episode of Game of Thrones. His own people have turned against him, and all the while, the Prime Minister is holed up in his castle, wetting himself about a visit from the King in the North.
Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have been crushed as Labour's welfare bill skyrockets to a record high, igniting a rebellion within their own party and exposing Starmer's crumbling authority. Despite their promises to get a grip on public spending, the welfare bill has exploded to $333 billion, and now 1.5 million people are relying on universal credit, a devastating blow to the Labour government's credibility. With 50 Labour MPs in full revolt, Starmer's leadership is on the brink, and his party's future is now teetering on the edge.
We are facing a really sizable rebellion today. We could be in the region of kind of 50 Labour MPs rebelling. And for a government that got a landslide less than a year ago, that is quite a situation to be in.
Difficult day for Keir Starmer. The Prime Minister faces a rebellion from many of his backbenchers over welfare reform.
Let that sink in. £333 billion. That is where welfare spending is projected to land. Not a rounding error, not a projection from a fringe economist, the government's own numbers, and sickness-related benefits alone, just that one category, could hit £73 billion by 2030. That rivals what Britain spends defending itself from foreign threats. Wrap your head around that. The bill for keeping people on sickness benefits is approaching the same scale as the entire national defense budget. Something has gone catastrophically wrong, and nobody at the top is being straight with you about it.
Hard-working people are being taxed more and more to pay for a ballooning benefits bill. So can the Prime Minister tell us why on his watch, for the first time ever, we are now spending more on welfare than we earn in income tax?
Here is where it gets worse. Starmer campaigned on reform. He stood at podiums and promised a welfare overhaul that would reduce dependency, get people back to work, and stop the bleeding from public finances. Reeves backed it. They sold it together. And now, the very bill they launched to fix the problem has become the bomb that is blowing their partnership apart. Because the welfare reform bill did not calm anything down. It ignited a rebellion so fierce that over 50 Labour MPs turned on their own leadership in open defiance. 50! From inside Starmer's own party. These are not Conservative MPs. These are the people who were supposed to be cheering him on.
According to a report by the Daily Mail, citing Labour sources, the Prime Minister is weighing up whether to remove Chancellor Rachel Reeves in a dramatic bid to steady his premiership.
What pushed them over the edge? They looked at the reforms and saw gaps wide enough to swallow the most vulnerable people in Britain whole. Disabled claimants left exposed, sickness benefit assessments rushed through without proper consultation, protections that looked solid on paper but crumbled the moment anyone examined them closely. Labour MPs, people elected to represent working-class communities, decided they could not vote for a bill that would punish the people who needed the system most. And when they refused, Starmer's response was not to listen. It was to reach for the whip and start handing out suspensions.
Yesterday, the Prime Minister was reduced to begging those same MPs to save his own skin.
Think about what that tells you. A prime minister so rattled by internal pressure that his instinct is to punish his own side rather than persuade them. That is not leadership. That is panic wearing a suit.
Keir Starmer may be talking about doing a reshuffle himself. It was reported that Rachel Reeves could be for the boot. The man who will always take responsibility himself, will never ask anyone else to carry the can. Now maybe even Rachel Reeves will be given the boot. He will be literally a man alone in the House of Commons by the end of this because he'll have got rid of everyone else.
Now look at Reeves. she walked into this government carrying enormous expectations. Here was the woman who was going to be the Iron Chancellor, the one who would finally impose fiscal discipline and make the numbers add up. Instead, she finds herself at the center of a political storm she cannot control, defending spending figures that contradict everything she told the public before the election. The moderate, pragmatic approach she championed on welfare has collided head-on with economic reality, and the collision has been ugly. Her credibility is not just damaged, it is being actively questioned by people inside her own party, behind closed doors, in ways that are now leaking into the open.
We're already in the soft left. We've got the biggest welfare spending that we've had in years. It's set to hit 400 billion by the end of this decade. We've got the highest tax burden in history.
The relationship between Starmer and Reeves is not a partnership anymore. It is a liability. Two leaders who cannot project a unified position, who offer contradictory signals on the same policy, who have allowed their personal political tensions to become the story rather than the substance of governing. You cannot run a country on dysfunction. And right now, dysfunction is the defining feature of this Labour government.
Mr. Speaker, he's broken his promise to grow the economy. The only thing that's grown is the welfare bill. The only thing that's grown is the welfare bill. So can the Prime Minister tell us, how many more people are out of work and claiming universal credit since he took office?
Meanwhile, the opposition smells blood. Kemi Badenoch has been surgical in her attacks, and honestly, it is hard to argue with the core of what she is saying. Under this government, what exactly is growing? Not the economy at any pace worth celebrating. Not wages in real terms for most working people. What is growing, unmistakably and undeniably, is the welfare bill.
Mr. Speaker, she talks about what we've done in relation to raising people out of work. We have the youth guarantee that we put in place for young people. We've raised the national minimum wage thanks to our Chancellor. We've helped young people into work by cutting NHS waiting lists thanks to the work of the Health Secretary. We put more police on the streets thanks to the work of the Home Secretary, and we've cut energy bills for young people thanks to the work of the energy. I am very proud of what this Labour government has delivered in the first session of this Parliament.
That is the reality Starmer had to face at Prime Minister's questions, and his response was to pivot. He talked about the youth guarantee, he talked about minimum wage increases, he talked about NHS waiting lists, all things that sound reasonable until you realize he was using them as a curtain to hide behind, desperate to avoid the central accusation that the one thing he promised to control is the one thing now completely out of control.
The Prime Minister doesn't want to say how many more people, in fact, are out of work and claiming universal credit since he took office. Perhaps he doesn't know. So let me tell him. The number is 1.5 million people.
That evasion matters. Because evasion at that level, from the Prime Minister, at that dispatch box, in front of the country, tells you something about where real authority sits in this government. Or rather, where it does not sit. Starmer is not projecting strength. He is managing optics, and the difference between those two things is the difference between a leader and a placeholder.
That is the entire population of Leeds, Cardiff, and Edinburgh put together. Hard-working people are being taxed more and more to pay for a ballooning benefits bill.
Universal credit claims are rising. Long-term economic inactivity stubbornly refuses to fall. The people supposed to be moved off welfare and into work are not moving, and the government has no compelling answer for why its strategy is not delivering. The structural problem with the British welfare state: too many people trapped in dependency, not enough pathways back to meaningful employment, a benefits system that sometimes punishes people for trying to work. None of that has been addressed in any serious way. The welfare reform bill was supposed to be the answer. It became the argument.
Mr. Speaker, talking about more defence spending is not the same as giving more money for defence. He has been in office for nearly 2 years, Mr. Speaker. What he does have, he's got a welfare plan until 2031, but he's not produced a defense investment plan. We have gone backwards on defense under him because we are borrowing to pay for welfare.
Here is the question nobody in Westminster wants you to ask. If Britain is borrowing at some of the highest rates in decades, if defense spending is climbing because global tensions demand it, and if welfare costs are simultaneously surging toward record highs, who exactly is paying for all of this? You are. Your taxes. Your children's future tax burden. The country is being mortgaged in real time, and the people holding the pen cannot agree on the terms.
Last week, we all saw him punch the Speaker's chair. This is not a man who is in control. Since the last King's speech, it's been one disaster after another. Cronyism, jobs for friends of convicted paedophiles, peerages for other friends of convicted paedophiles, broken promises on taxes, U-turn after U-turn after U-turn.
The suspension of rebel MPs, intended to showcase strength, instead revealed weakness. When you must discipline such a large portion of your parliamentary party, you've already lost the argument. Silencing 50 MPs raising legitimate concerns only pushes them further away, creating a faction within your own government with nothing left to lose and every reason to speak out. Starmer has given his internal critics the freedom to become a persistent, organized, and vocal problem.
That's the problem. He has had a collapse in popularity, and that collapse in popularity has led to a collapse in his own authority and the faith and trust that MPs have in him.
What does a Labour government look like when it can't pass its flagship legislation without internal conflict? What does a chancellor look like when her economic project becomes synonymous with fiscal drift? What does a prime minister look like when every tough question is deflected and every crisis is blamed on someone else? You are seeing it now, in real time. This is collapse before the formal announcement.
Yesterday, we learned that the cost of government borrowing is now the highest in 2 decades. That's under him. Instead of getting a grip on the economy, the Chancellor is briefing out rent controls to curry favour with left-wing backbenchers. This is not a serious way to run the economy. It is time the Prime Minister gives her an easier job. So will he listen to businesses, listen to the country, and reshuffle the Chancellor?
Voters chose Labour for competence, expecting a steady, in-control government. Instead, they got internal conflict, a welfare system bleeding money, a growing opposition, and a prime minister increasingly isolated. Britain deserved better than this. You deserved better than this. And the tragedy, the genuinely infuriating part, is that this was all foreseeable. The cracks were visible before the election. The tensions between Starmer and Reeves were documented. The scale of the welfare challenge was publicly available data. Nobody lied to you about what the problems were. They just convinced you they were the ones capable of solving them. They were not. And every day that welfare bill climbs higher, every day another Labour MP breaks ranks, every day Starmer deflects instead of answers, that truth becomes impossible to ignore.